Hello, tarot friends and fans. Welcome back to Water Moon Cards. My name is Luna, and I told myself I wasn't going to do kind of deck walkthroughs, reviews, comparisons, and all of that kind of stuff on this channel. There's plenty of other channels that do a fabulous job of this kind of content, and I appreciate it. And I thought I was just going to focus on other things. But for two reasons, I'm breaking my little assumption about myself. I won't say rule. Today for this deck, which is the Blood Moon Tarot. One is that I have not seen a comparison video yet between the indie version and the newly released US Games mass market version. And I wanted to look at this side by side myself, so I figured why not film it? Might be helpful for somebody else. And the other thing is that I've been thinking a lot about aesthetics and how that relates to our experience of working with and reading tarot. And by aesthetics, I mean aesthetics on all levels, including the material experience of handling cards and, the different finishes or different sizes or details or choices or contrast or that kind of thing, as well as the art style and, other aspects of aesthetics. So this is going to be eventually a part of a series. I have some other ideas of sort of groups of things from my collection that I want to talk about or compare or enjoy with you all. But I thought this would be good because the US Games version is just released a couple of weeks ago, so I'm being relatively timely. And I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. I was going to wait till my birthday coming up in a couple months, but I just decided I really wanted to get the updated version sooner than later. Part of this was actually another review that I saw online, and she did a shuffling demo at the end, and I'll be honest, I kind of got a boner when I saw how easily the US Games version is to shuffle. I just thought, you know what, why wait? So here we are. Before I get into the details of this deck and kind of why I'm doing this walkthrough, I want to put a warning up front that this deck has a lot of eyeballs and it has a lot of snakes in it. So if you're freaked out by eyeballs or like lots of eyes on the same thing or any kind of depictions of snakes, this is not a good walkthrough for you to watch, okay? Just turn me off, go do something else. Just in brief, the Blood Moon Tarot was originally a Kickstarter project produced independently by Sam Gay, the artist. This is how you spell Sam's name, Samguay. And they had a limited run. I believe they did have a slight overrun from their original production, but then did not do a reprint at all. And, this deck received a lot of enthusiasm. I think it was on Kickstarter for a long time before the cards were printed and sent out to the backers. And there was a lot of enthusiasm. There was also a lot of frustration with certain aspects of the production, and maybe I'll talk about that as I go through the cards. I did not support the Kickstarter. I didn't find out about this until it was already sold out. But I got a copy of it in a trade with a very nice person who traded me for this copy, and I have enjoyed it. I'm really glad I was able to trade for it, but I don't use it as often as I'd like, and part of the reason is the kind of material aesthetics of this deck. So I was really happy first when Sam said that they were going to do a second edition and lighten some of the really dark cards where it was hard to see details and, maybe swap out the cardstock. But then that kind of dragged on, and a couple years went by and nothing really happened. And so then late last year, when I finally poked my head up out of the sand, I really hadn't been paying attention to, tarot publications, upcoming releases, anything like that, because I didn't want to be tempted. I didn't want to have to feel like I wanted to buy anything. But I found out that Sam had made a deal with US Games to reprint their deck and, make it more available, more affordable. Again, didn't know very much about it, was hoping that US Games wouldn't mess it all up, or make them try to, change the artwork or anything like that. And fortunately, I think they've done a pretty good job. So, like I said, I have watched part of another walkthrough, but I really wanted to see these in person for myself and look at them side by side with the first edition, the independent publication. I'm not going to do a full review of the whole kit. I will link to another fuller, more fulsome review of that so you can see. But I showed the first edition box just a second ago. The second edition, Mass Mark edition, comes in this massively large box. This is like 2.5 times the size of a regular tarot deck box because it comes with a hardback book. The first edition you could get in a very large hardback book, separate purchase. And again, I was tempted by that, but then I downloaded, I think, a PDF sampler of that book. And I have to say, Sam's writing on the tarot didn't really wow me. It wasn't anything particularly new or interesting to me, at least the couple cards that I read. You know, a lot of the same old kind of esoteric views and perspectives on the tarot. However, I do think this book is really nice. That comes with the second edition. It is hardbound, and it has lovely, bigger pictures of the cards. And then it also has some of the collage-scapes that were the original artwork. So the artist originally created larger pieces of work that were all integrated together and then cut out each one as its own card. So I think that's cool that you get to see some of that in inside this book. All right, so let's get into the deck. These are the backs. On the left we have the US Games second edition. On the right we have the original indie version from the artist. The order that I'm going to go in is the earth suit, the water suit, fire suit, and the air suit, and the suits are all renamed in this deck, and then the triumphs at the end. And just initially you'll notice that the backs are different. So the originals had a 3-color back. It's black with this kind of golden parchment kind of color. It's a little hard to describe. It's a warm orangey kind of parchment color, and then little hints of red. So you can see some in the pomegranate seeds here and in the eyeball of this character, and then the little round things that these cranes are holding, like shells or something that they're holding in their mouths. US Games version has a 2-color rendering of that same artwork, and I like the backs a lot. They have kind of an Asian influence to my eye. And then we have the artwork itself. And here you can see that the US Games version is larger. So the original cards were just a smidge smaller than a standard tarot deck. So maybe 2 millimeters less wide and 4 millimeters or so less tall. And then the new version is quite a bit taller than a standard tarot, which might be a challenge to shuffle. We're going to see how that works. And I just want to hold these two up so you can see that the artwork itself is, I would say, a good 20 to 25% larger in the new version. But they've done a good job of either rescanning or something. Somehow they've gotten this to look nice. It doesn't look grainy or whatnot. Now there is a texture, and I'm not sure I entirely love that they've gone with the linen finish on the US Games version, because in part it's also a shiny linen finish, which I didn't realize was a thing, but you can see there how much that reflects the light, and then versus this one, which is more of a satin kind of a finish on the original. So I'm trying to get them both in light at the same time. You can see the one on the left reflects the light more. I think I can get used to this, but it is a little weird. And there you go with the kind of screen door effect on the artwork, which you can't see at all angles, but you can see on some angles. So that's interesting. I feel like the color tone, and we'll go through these, but I feel like the color tone is good. It's a good match for the original, and I can see that Sam's had their hands all over this production. So they definitely had, a lot of input into how this was made, and I'm glad for that because I think they made some good choices. You'll also notice that we're lacking our borders on the left-hand card. There are what I'll call applied borders on the right-hand deck. So there's a different border for each suit, and they have these little accents. So for example, the suit of honey or earth that we're in has drips of honey, pomegranates, a leaf at the top, and so on. It's the same for all of the cards get that same border. So this leaf that overlaps is not part of the original artwork, it's part of the border. I like borders on my cards, and I didn't mind that these had borders. I understand, you know, either people are not fond of borders or they're not fond of overly decorative borders, but I don't mind them here. What I like about this is I wonder if we can put it together and make the collage at the end. So we're going to try that with a couple of cards. The other aspect of this that you can't see from looking at it top down is that they're both edged. The original is gilded or faux gilded, and you can see I've worked with this a bit, and I did get it also secondhand, and it's starting to dent and chip a little bit. I didn't mind gilding. I don't ever look for it as a feature of a deck. I don't think it improves anything, but I felt like, you know, especially with one of the suits being honey, that it was fine to have as an added feature. What I love is Sam's choice here on the US Games version to go with a matte burgundy finish that matches the backs. And I wish more deck producers would do this. Just not an extra gilding, but just a colored edging that matches the overall aesthetic of the deck. I think that's lovely, and it would save me having to edge decks. And I'm really pointing out all these differences because we're talking about the aesthetics and the overall feel. I was trying to figure out whether this image is cropped, and it is. So you can see this drip of honey here comes down to here, and then it's behind the label for the card. This is cut off, whereas here you have more room between that end of that drip of honey and the label for the card. So we are losing a little bit of the original artwork in the blown up version, and I think that just has to do with the proportions and, you know, how do you make a borderless piece of card out of an originally framed piece of artwork. So how do you translate between a bordered version and a non-bordered version of the same thing? So this is the suit of honey, and it equates to the suit of pentacles or coins, or whatever you would call the earth suit. It's predominantly got greens in it, so the suits are somewhat color coded in this deck, and again we'll look at that. And it will also, now that we've got one, there is some nudity in this deck. I don't know that much of it is below the waist, so it's mostly upper body. And I noticed that US Games has also changed so the numbers are spelled out in English characters rather than using the Roman numerals, which I think a lot of people like. Personally, I like Arabic numerals. I think they're the fastest to read. I also just really love the depiction of people in this deck. It is diverse, and it's also somewhat ambivalent. So you can read these characters as non-binary or trans, you know, or gendered, depending on what perspective you hold for yourself or the person that you're reading for. And I like that very much. I also like that there's a strong sense of place in this deck. So far I am seeing that the colors across the two are very similar. This one, the original, maybe just a hint more saturated, but I think it also might depend kind of card by card. And we're going to go through and look at some cards that in this original version people were complaining were too dark and they couldn't see the details. So that was one of the problems with the original that people didn't like, is that they didn't like the borders, the decorative borders, and they were not happy with that's interesting. They were not happy with the saturation. Now here, you actually get the full head of this character on the Knight of Honey. So that tells me that they went back to the original artwork and rescanned it and redid this. And then they just made maybe slightly different cropping decisions based on the sort of size of the deck that they chose. So that's cool. That again tells me that the artist was involved, and I'm very happy about that. I think artists should be involved in all aspects of the production of their decks, not just the artwork, but actually the physical object as much as possible. And I won't take too much time here, but you can see here in this border on the songs, which is the cups or water suit, you have this crane, and they're actually overlapping into the image a little bit. So you do lose a little bit of this like little extra stuff in the original version, but you gain this perspective, just having a larger image to look at. And maybe for some people the borders are distracting, you know, they're a little bit too busy, or they feel like they don't add much. I like all the lotuses in this deck, of course. And there's lots of spirals. And fairly open imagery in terms of interpretation. There's not a lot of, you know, big sad feelings or big angry feelings or big, you know, overjoyed, ecstatic feelings. Everybody's kind of got these open, neutral expressions. Like even this in the Five of Songs, you have this person just looking down. Their musical instrument seems to be broken, but they don't, I don't know, maybe this is just like the moment before they've realized exactly what's happened, but they don't look upset to me. They look like, oh, this has happened, and now what am I going to do about that? I love the color palette of this deck, and I also love that there's an ambiguity of how people interact with their environment. In other words, where do I end and where do you begin? Or where do I end and where does the tree begin? Or are we all kind of one thing blended together? It poses a lot of interesting questions, I think. One thing I had noticed in the original deck was that this suit of songs, because it has so much pink in it, it wasn't always going with the rest of the deck, which has a lot more warmer tones. But I have a theory about maybe how they've played with the contrast, and so I want to see if that's really true or not. Once I get to the end of the flip through, we'll lay out some cards and see what that looks like. All right, so we're into the suit of skins, which equates with the fire suit or wands. And I love the visual metaphor here is, who are you? How do you present yourself to the world? What skin are you wearing today? And certainly if we're talking about queer representation, that's an important question to ask, or one that gets asked a lot. Yeah, it's interesting, the aesthetics of this. So here I feel like I'm a voyeur looking at these two, maybe through a window or a doorway or a portal. And here I feel like I'm just in the forest with them. So it's an interesting contrast to what the border does to the artwork or to the reader's feeling of being in proximity to the actions in the cards. This one is much more cropped in, and we see more of the character. Personally, I like seeing characters in environments, so there needs to be some kind of environment around them happening. I don't just want a bunch of portraits. But I do like seeing the images up close in the US Games version on the left. Really did an excellent job color matching. I'm very pleased with this US Games production in that sense. And here we have skins as mushrooms. There's a lot of mushrooms in this suit as well. So what are we growing into? What are we becoming? It's interesting how the borders also change where my gaze lands on each card and what details I'm noticing. Like I was noticing the band here that this character is wearing first over here, whereas here I was more focused on the finger turning into the snake. So this suit, the Suit of Dreams, was always a little dark and harder to read. And we'll see how we do here. I think maybe the border actually makes it harder to read. And just getting rid of this extra darkness around it kind of makes it easier. Although I love this toothy monster up here. Lots of toothy monsters. And this kind of purpley violet blue color is dominant in this suit. So when I was reading with this deck before, I would always focus on this character and kind of these faces, but in the new version without the border, I'm noticing these characters in the cloak and how they're pointing their spears at each other. So I think that the aesthetics do make a difference, and I'm kind of digging the borderless version because it helps me focus on the art itself more. It's more details are kind of popping out at me. This is our cover image. It reminds me of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego with that huge hat. But I love it. I love it. You know, some people are weird about eyeballs or snakes or spiders. For me, it's moths. So there's a few cards like that last one that have a lot of moths on them, and I am learning to work with that aversion. Yeah, this is so interesting with the borders. It's like, are you watching someone having the nightmare or are you having the nightmare? And it's interesting too how these are showing up. I'm trying to keep my lighting pretty neutral here. I do have a little bit of artificial light coming from the sides, but I also have a window and we've got natural light diffuse coming in. And it's showing up on screen that this is a lot more purple and this is more gray. I would say that's true. There's a hint of that. I would say this one is more colorful, the US Games version, but it's not as much as you're seeing on screen. This is another one of the cards that, to me, talks about what is your body and what is your costume, or what is your environment. You know, is this a caterpillar man or is this a man wearing caterpillar armor? I don't know. Here it's much more obvious that there's a figure behind him with, you know, a big sort of crocodile snout and teeth. And here, I don't know, that could just be maybe like a cave or something behind him. Stalactites and stalagmites. It's not necessarily got the same feeling as a separate creature over here. So it's interesting how the cropping works too, which part of the images are emphasized. I really love this card. There's several characters in this deck that have multiple arms. And of course, that's a common feature of Buddhist deities as well. This guy's got 6 arms. Doing different mudras here. Very interesting. Getting like a Hierophant, high priest kind of a vibe from this King of Dreams. So now we're at the majors, and this full card was one that people were pretty upset about when the independent deck first came out. They really felt like they could not see the detail. And I can see that they've maybe made it just a tiny bit brighter, but not that much. But I do think that taking the borders off helps you focus on all of the details that are going on back here. You've got hands and robes wafting and a face up here with a little veil. And then you can see that this is a door and the fool's stepping through into this universe beyond here. So I don't know. I wonder if other people who were upset with the original production, if they feel vindicated or validated, or, you know, if their frustration has been absolved by this production or not. This was another one that was quite dark, and it's still quite dark. But again, without that border, I think your eye is more drawn to the details of the artwork, less distracted. And again, just the bigger image helps too. So I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but recognizing it on different cards and how it impacts the different readings. I looked in the book, and the description for the Emperor was one that I really liked, talking about the different flavors of masculinity and the different functions of something as a protector. It was kind of cool. This is one of my favorite cards in this deck. This is the Hierophant, and it reminds me of the work of H.R. Geiger, who is known for these kind of people and machine conglomerates. His work also inspired things like the alien from Aliens, Predator that you see on screen from the Predator movies, and also the Borg from Star Trek. I don't know that he directly worked on any of those projects, but certainly his aesthetic and that kind of what's man, what's machine did influence it. So that's cool. I do think this lover's card is just a tiny bit brighter here, but it's also not quite as crisp. And I think that might be the linen treatment. I'm seeing more details here in the moths on her arm than I am on this one. But it's like a tiny hint. I feel compelled to point out differences where I see them, but I can't say that they are that striking. It's mostly just the size and the borders. I've always liked this strength card. I thought it was a very cool depiction. My eye is drawn more to the scene back here in the Hermit card. This is very cool. It's kind of spooky. You know, I can't tell if these are built structures or, again, natural landscape back here. I love an 8-spoked wheel. 2 thumbs up from me. This Justice card is really beautiful. Very sensual death card. It's a rather sensual deck overall. You know, Temperance, she's got her arms thrown back over her head, showing her whole body. I love this Temperance card. It's probably one of my favorites of all time. How she's embodying both elements. This reminds me of watching volcanoes under the sea and how the lava explodes open, then is immediately cooled by seawater, and then explodes open and is immediately cooled by seawater, and you keep seeing these like flashes of red over and over again. So that combination of fire and water in Temperance is an alchemical process and is forming crystals here in her body. And she's kind of spooky. She's got this really interesting sort of deep sea Medusa almost quality. to her. I really like her. So, and sorry if I'm gendering cards that aren't meant to be gendered, but I don't know. It's just the way my brain's registering things today. I like this devil card a lot. I like the visual analogy. And what I was going to say a minute ago, and I interrupted myself, was that this deck is also very visceral for me. So it's sensual, and I think that combination of, you know, where's my body, where's my environment, it makes for a very visceral feel for things. We do have the Roman numerals in the Triumph cards. And Judgment looks similar to Death, a kind of cloaked, blue cloaked figure. And again, the multiple hands. And I like this world card too. It's kind of like the universe. And this one on the left is more saturated in this particular card. Yeah, definitely. This one has a more brown kind of cast to it, and this one is more saturated. So that's the walkthrough. I also wanted to show you, you know, a shuffling demo. So I will back out the camera and move my little trinkets here, and I will do that. All right, so shuffling demo. Again, this is the first edition with the gilded edges. And, you know, this is fairly thin cardstock, and if you take a single card, it seems like, oh, this is fine. You know, it's flexible, it bounces back, it's got good snap. I like the cardstock. But the gilding is sharp, and when you get it into this configuration to try to bend half a deck, it's actually very stiff. And this is the kind of cardstock that if you force it, it will then crease, and like in a big noticeable way. I've had decks like this before. I'll try to look up and figure out, actually Banksy Tarot probably is like this. And that's one I've talked about on the channel before. But yeah, there's a bunch of indie decks that were of this era in 2019, 2020 or so that had this kind of cardstock, and it's not very forgiving. So when I try to shuffle it, I can only get a little bit of a bend in it. And keep in mind that I've shuffled this multiple times. And then when you try to do that, it's so matte and slick that it's hard to control. So it is shuffleable. But again, the more you shuffle it, the more that gilding is going to rub off and start to look not so great. So that's that. I don't want to shuffle it any more than that. I'm just going to give you one of those. But this is the true test. Like I said, when I saw the other person shuffling this, I thought, wow, that looks good. I want in. So first of all, single card, can completely bend this, and it's not going to crease, right? Bendy, bendy, bendy. No problems. Not worried about that. This is like closer to what original US game stock was back in the day. And then when you want to bend, oh yeah, look how much I can bend this. So oh my God, that's so satisfying. And it does snap back. It's starting to bow laterally a little bit right out of the gate. So it already kind of has a sway this way, but I don't care. I don't mind that. And maybe that will calm down, or maybe it won't. This is such an amazing shuffle. I love it. And I think this deck would be fine if you just occasionally shuffle it the other way. So if you hold it face up, then it won't get that kind of bow one way or another. Yeah, that is incredible. I know people like overhand, so I'll show that. This is a linen finish, so you know it's got air in there. It's not going to stick to itself. I do a combination of riffle and overhand, and mostly riffle because that just randomizes better. If you overhand only, the math works out that you have to overhand 10,000 times in order to get randomization. So if you're an overhander and you notice that you get a lot of the same cards all the time, that's why. What you can do instead of riffling, if you're not able to riffle, is smush. So you can do one of these, and if you do this for 30 seconds and, you know, move your pals around, then you will get random cards. And then the other way that you can shuffle if you're not a riffler, or the other way you can choose cards if you're not a riffler, I should say, is to, you know, shuffle however you want, and then just fan them, and then just choose at random, and that will also randomize. So, yeah, I'm going to shuffle this one more time just because that was fun, and I am very satisfied with this. And here's the deal. I don't love every single aspect of this production, but what I love is that it is good. It has the artist's hand all over it. It looks nice. It's easy to handle, and it's easy to see what's going on in the artwork. And because of that, I am much more likely to use this now, because I really wasn't using my indie copy very much, and it was making me sad because I love this artwork. I absolutely adore this artwork. I like the, you know, the gaze that Sam has on the tarot and how they have interpreted these archetypes and these feelings and these experiences. You know, to me, Page of Skins, Page of Wands, sure. You know, the Empress, yeah. Like, it makes sense as a deck. I like it. I like their interpretation of things. And it's open enough that I can put my own interpretation in here. It's not dictating to me exactly this card always means this one thing and it never means anything else. So it's open and it's interesting and it gives me a lot to think about, and it has a lot of detail. So if I get stuck, I can just sit and look at the pretty picture for a minute and think about it, and then, you know, draw on Sam's imagination to help me. So I'm really looking forward to doing more readings with this. Yay, those are two good cards to end on. All right, thank you, Sam. Thank you, US Games. And thank you to all of you for watching. Let me know what you thought about this. Really, this was, you know, meant to be sort of a public service for anybody who had the indie or who thought they wanted the indie and couldn't get it. And then, like, kind of, is the mass market edition worth it? And I would say if this is your jam, I would say yes, the mass market is worth it. It's not going to be everybody's jam, and that's okay. You know, I'm not trying to give anybody FOMO or make you feel like you ought to want this if you don't like it. But I like it. I like it, and I feel like it could be an excellent reader for me. I just need to use it a little bit more frequently, and that's what I intend to do. So again, thank you all for being here. I appreciate you, and till next time, I'll see you later.